Hello, everybody. This is Here Comes the Spider-Cast number 17, covering October 1981 Spidey Comics. I am your co-host, Mike L., and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be starting off with Amazing Spider-Man number 221, and then maybe we'll jump to the annual, Amazing Spider-Man annual.
Yeah.
And then we've got Marvel Team Up number 110 after that, and then we're going to finish things off with Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man number 59.
Right. So yeah, starting off with Amazing number 221, we have a script by Denny O'Neil again, unfortunately. Unfortunately.
Oh, boy.
And guest pencils by Alan Kupperberg, who I know because he drew a couple issues of Transformers in the 80s. Are you familiar with Alan Kupperberg?
No, I'm actually not. I was going to say, I don't think I recognize him.
I mean, he was never like a huge penciler or a popular one, but he's done, he did some Supergirl in the past.
Okay.
And he did some random stuff here and there. He's not great, but there is some stuff I like about his art, which we can talk about later.
Yeah, I was going to say, decent. I think for the most part, I really enjoyed his art because John Romita Jr. Has been doing a lot of the pencils for the Denny O'Neil stories, and those are really like the only redeeming qualities I feel of a lot of the Denny O'Neil stories is that John Romita Jr. is doing the art. But yeah, I think that a lot of the, like, particularly the faces and Peter Parker looks like Peter Parker and looks like John Romita Jr. would draw. So
I agree with that.
I think that maybe there must have been some character sheets and kind of turnaround so that they can get a feel of what the characters are supposed to look like and try to keep them on model as much as they could, because I feel like these ones are pretty spot on.
Yeah, and now the inking by Jim Mooney overpowers it a little bit, but I've seen him where he inks himself, and he's actually got a really interesting style. You know what? I think he did the Howard the Duck issue of Marvel Team Up that we read. Remember?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was him. So he definitely has an interesting style.
Right.
And definitely not bad art. Now, as far as the story goes, this is yet another weird issue.
Yeah, it was really boring.
Yeah.
Weird. Like, the first half was like extremely boring, and then the second half was just so buck wild. Like, this plot takes such a weird turn.
Yes.
Well,
let's just talk about it briefly.
Yeah,
so
sure.
First, it starts out Spidey and his usual, he's on campus at Empire State University, right? And then he goes into work/school, and then he comes across this other guy who's rushing somewhere, and that guy goes into his lab or whatever, and there's this supervillain standing in the lab named Ramrod, who starts threatening him because he's got this plan cooked up, and this guy's going to help him. It's just sort of ridiculous. Then Peter, blah, 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 he's talking to the dean about his failing grades or whatever, and blah, 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 work performance. Then Spider-Man goes outside, and of course Ramrod's just standing there. And then it's just Spider-Man, we ain't mixed it since Frisco that time. And then the little note at the bottom, way back in Daredevil 103. And it's just that typical crappy, no motivation supervillain fight that I really don't like. And then they just fight for a few pages, and it's just all crap. What do you think of this part?
Yeah, this is the part I was talking about, which was just kind of boring. I don't mind some of the Peter Parker stuff that happens, like him having to go talk to the dean and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that feels like a Peter Parker story. But then Ramrod coming in and just kind of spilling his plot, and then walking around campus with this like half metal dome head.
Yeah.
Like nobody's really caring or noticing.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of boring and bland, I think.
Right.
And then...
And just cliche.
Yeah, and then after that, it kind of goes crazy, like I was saying.
Wait, what word did you use again?
Buck Wild.
Buck Wild. Yes, it goes Buck Wild.
Yeah.
So Peter Parker goes to a bar to see his to see this gig, right?
Right. And of
but
course,
and of
Pinky's
course,
there.
who's there? Yeah, but Deborah Whitman and her boyfriend.
Oh,
which is just
right.
ridiculous coincidence.
Right.
And then, yeah, of course, his neighbor. He came there to see Lonesome Pinky, didn't he? I think he did.
Right.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, but it's just ridiculous. I don't know. And then like Lonesome Pinky singing. It's just okay. This is where it goes crazy. You're right. Lonesome Pinky is singing, but everyone in the crowd is affected by this drug that has been put in. Is it the alcohol? Or
yeah,
how did they get it?
somebody yells free drinks on the house, and that's what the Ramrod was doing at the science lab.
Right.
He was getting the scientists to make this chemical that would make everybody aggressive and mean.
Right.
It's very Kingsman-esque.
I haven't seen that.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, so they kind of get all aggressive, but the thing that calms them down is Pinky playing.
Ridiculous. Like this is the plot out of I don't even know what. This is beneath a kid's cartoon, you know?
Yeah, it's just random. Like it doesn't really make much sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Why is the music calming them down?
It's just because it's crap. I don't know, because the writing is crap.
Because,
that's why.
I think it's so weird because every time we've seen Lonesome Pinkus, he's made Peter Parker so extremely frustrated that he's punched through a wall. He's like broken things. Like he's always extremely aggressive when he hears him sing. So why all of a sudden is it the opposite?
I know.
It would have been different if maybe throughout the story Peter Parker keeps falling asleep because of the music. Like that could have been like funny, I guess.
Sure.
You know, he's always late for the dates with Deb because he's falling asleep because the music is so like boring and quiet. And then it has at least some sort of payoff in this moment where his music is calming everybody down. I don't know. It's just so absolutely random. It's like the opposite of what should have happened.
No, I know. And then, of course, he gets the cure. And then Spider-Man gets the cure. And then he goes back, and Ramrod's there. So he's got to fight him.
Of course.
And there's a fight scene and fisticuffs. I don't know. It's just really stupid. And then it's like, pages and pages of fighting.
And then, it's not even anything really interesting. Like, nothing super exciting happens. Like, the biggest thing is they like, jump through a bunch of tires and... Ramrod is kind of getting stuck in them, but even that's not super clever. Like it's just whatever.
And then you know what? You know what's funny is as I'm at the same time that we're reading these comics, people are coincidentally posting on certain Facebook pages about how they're actually reading this story, and everyone's raving about it.
Really?
How much they loved, this era of Denny O'Neil.
Oh.
And I'm just like, oh, really? Because I'm reading those right now, and they're garbage. They're complete garbage.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's a fist fight, and then Spider-Man goes back and puts the cure in everyone's individual drink. According to Kissick, a drop in each glass will do the trick. It's working. They're coming back to their senses. They're going to make it. Guess what? 2 panels later, the story's
done. What a Denny O'Neil ending, huh? It's
and then
so fast.
He even has the nerve to put a person saying, "Yeah, who was that masked man?" Like, oh my god, this is just paint by numbers at this point. Garbage.
Yeah, no, I didn't like this.
No, so story not recommended. Art is definitely decent, but overall not a recommended issue.
No. So, in comparison, from The Amazing Spider-Man to The Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 15, I think that this is an amazing story. I absolutely loved this comic.
It was, let's put it this way. It tells me that either Frank Miller co-plotted this or maybe Denny O'Neil is just more at home with like crime stories. But yes, this was much better.
I had so much fun reading this.
Yeah, so written by Denny O'Neil and drawn by Frank Miller, inked by Klaus Janson, but you can take it from here.
I absolutely loved, like, the news articles almost being chapters in this like
Sure.
noir story. It's like
Right,
this mystery is
right.
going on. So we see at the beginning, we see the Punisher going and assassinating this cult leader who is like kind of messing around with these people and making this woman sick.
Right.
And Spider-Man kind of intervenes and stops. Well, it doesn't stop Punisher, but he tries to catch him. And the ring that this mob boss or this cult leader is using to poison and stun these people and make them sick, Doc Ock is after it. So he goes and steals it. And it's kind of this plot where Doc Ock is trying to kill a bunch of people in New York. And it's this mystery of what's happening and where where he's hiding, and Spider-Man and Punisher have to end up teaming up at the end of the day to stop him, and it's just fantastic. It's really, really good.
Well, it's definitely like you said. One of the running subplot is that the Daily Planet or the Daily Bugle is about to publish a headline, and the headline is "Guru Shot." And then J. Jonah Jameson rejects it because it. What does he say here? See if you can establish a connection between Spider-Man and the Punisher. Blah blah blah. So basically, he's delaying using it as the front page. And so the ongoing subplot of the story is every time there's a new development in the mystery, that becomes the new headline. But then it gets rejected again for a different reason, right?
Right.
And then it just goes from there. So that's definitely a cool way to organize the story. There's definitely some really cool art from Frank Miller. But it's funny because compared to the annual that we reviewed a few weeks back, I still think that art was better, the one with Doctor Strange.
Okay.
But this art is really good. But it's funny because I do usually associate Frank Miller with Klaus Janson, but I just found this art a little bit sloppier. What did you think?
Yeah, I think maybe the art itself was a little bit sloppier. Maybe that was the inking, possibly. But I do really love a lot of the poses and a lot of the stuff, like how it's drawn.
Sure.
Or sorry, like what is being drawn, not necessarily how it's drawn.
Okay.
Like one in particular, there's a panel on digital page 11. We have this pose that Spider-Man is in, and he's kind of like he's just jumped through the window of the brother of the cult leader who's still alive to get some information from him, and he's like stuck to the window, but he's kind of curled up and he's got his head in his hand and he's kind of doing this sarcastic pose and surprising him. It's on digital page 11.
I think my page numbers are different because I still have the ads. So
okay.
Let me see. So my pages should be. Oh my gosh! I noticed that too.
I love it
When he's like leaning on the filing cabinet.
Yeah,
that's a freaking good pose.
I love it. It's so cool, like because I can completely picture that like in real life happening, like how exactly he's sticking to the wall, and it's this kind of cocky, funny, intimidating pose for him to just appear in, and that's the first time both the audience sees him and this guy that's intimidated by him sees him. I think it's fantastic.
And it's something we've never seen, never seen before. And that's props to Frank Miller for thinking of that. Because,
for sure.
It's hard to come up with new poses for Spider-Man, but he did it, right? So
right. Well, I don't even think it should be that hard. I think it's just that they reuse like the iconic poses.
Sure.
Because stuff like this is so fun. I don't know why they don't do that more often.
Well, unfortunately, just lack of imagination, I think.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I don't know, but could be.
Yeah.
But even if you flip to the next page, there's even like a really cool shot of Spider-Man kind of crawling. He's almost coming out of the panel as he's going away from the guy as he's hanging upside down. So there's and then right above that there's like the 3-panel sequence of the guy hanging upside down.
And you can see that he's spinning. Like he's slowly spinning because he's hanging upside down.
Right.
I love that.
Point.
Yeah, it's really cool, really clever. I also love the panel layout in a lot of these pages, especially with the stuff with Doc Ock. There's a lot of long vertical panels,
Sure.
And it's a lot of the times where his arms are kind of coming in and reaching for something or punching or hitting things.
Yep.
And you can really feel like the speed and the strength and power.
Yes. Yes.
Just by the panel and how it's laid out and how long it is. Like you can, without having to, show the Doc Ock arm entering in one frame and then in the next one it's completely extended out. You just have it completely extended in this long panel. You can tell that it traveled that entire way.
Well, I think I'm on the page where the arm is coming in and ripping away that worker, and then Doc Ock is going in and grabbing that canister. Is that what page you're on? It's great.
Yeah.
And then look at the bottom when Spidey swings in. That's a great shot of Spidey.
Yeah, I think earlier too he's fighting Punisher, and like that there's the first panel. I think it's just like completely the arm, and then at the end you see Punisher's face and he's just being punched by the arm. Let me see if I can find that. It's right before the page with the cool Spidey pose.
Okay, which cool Spidey pose?
The one where he's on the window with it like legs crossed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just a minute.
So digital 10 for anybody who's reading the digital
Following
one.
along. Oh, geez, I gotta find this again. Oh, here it is. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that is really cool. You're right.
You like all of these panels, you can feel the speed again just by how the panel is laid out and how much extra room there is where the arm is just kind of there, like extended towards the other side of the panel. It's really, really good.
Yeah. Again, just really creative.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like, usually I prefer, like I've said before, I prefer art that's more, I guess, polished, like Michael Golden or someone. But the fact is, like, because you can, if you break it down and look at like the individual components, you could say, well, the fingers don't quite look right and this doesn't quite look right. But it's just the imagination he puts into it, that just makes it work.
Right. I'd rather the anatomy be a little bit off and tell a good story through the art.
Right.
Like,
yes, me too.
I would take this over most of the stories we've read because it's interesting. There's a lot of stuff to look at. It tells a story without having to have the dialogue there at all.
Good point.
So I absolutely love this stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing is that even when he's teamed up with Denny O'Neil, who we don't usually like, he's able to pull such a good story from it.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
It's like they say, it's not what the story is, it's how the story is told. And that's what Frank Miller is obviously a master at. Like he's taking this story that may or may not be great, but he's doing it in a way that makes it so interesting.
Right.
To follow along with. And this is also a time when, Frank Miller was bringing sort of a grittier realism to Daredevil at the time. And we didn't see it as much in Spider-Man, but as you'll see in the later years, it will get a little bit more like this with when Roger Stern moves over to Amazing. I think you'll see it become more like this, which I really like, And then did you notice that really cool splash page of Spider-Man punching out Doc Ock?
Yes, that was another note I had. I also love that. What I really like about it too is on the previous page, the panel before the splash page is completely silhouetted. So it's like a light blue background, and then Doc Ock and Spider-Man and like all of this like techno jargon or whatever is completely black, and you see the silhouette of it, and you have a little bit of dialogue. A swell evil genius like you shouldn't be wasted. Boom. But hurt, that you should be. Like, it's I think it makes that splash page even more fantastic.
Good point.
To have that contradiction of like the solid black, and then you cut to like an all white panel with just Spidey knocking out Doc Ock, and the arms, like the squiggles and the lines of the arms. It's so good.
You know what? This actually, I want to bring up something quick. A little side note here. I've taken side by side comparisons of these classic comics, side by side with the reprinted or digital versions, and sometimes they go in and they completely recolor them.
Okay.
And it drives me crazy. But another thing that I didn't know happened was there was a reprint of a Batman story by Neil Adams. And not only did they completely recolor the story, which is understandable, they actually used the computer coloring to create new shadows, like, the Batman's shadow over top of someone, which I didn't like. But beyond that, they would actually take, like, let's just say you had a shot of the moon, and then in the original art, the moon was just a yellow circle. They would actually go in
and make it, like, add the craters and everything?
Add craters to it. Like, it looked like a photograph. Like, are you kidding me? That's not what a comic book is supposed to look like. This is what a comic book is supposed to look like.
I understand, like, cleaning it up and recoloring, but you're supposed to emulate what the original art was supposed to look like, not add to it.
Exactly.
I think that's a lot of the problems with like the Star Wars movies too, with George Lucas going back. Like, it has that same feel. Like, we didn't want all this extra junk.
Right. I'm telling you right now, I don't usually advocate for illegal downloading, but I gleefully encourage people to download the despecialized versions of Star Wars, because until George Lucas releases the original cuts remastered in HD, I am going to continue to watch the illegal despecialized editions, because nobody on earth wants to see CGI bullshit added into a 1977 movie. Right?
You don't like McClunky?
Wait, which one? What's McClunky?
That's the newest thing that everybody's talking about. Greedo now yells McClunky right before he dies.
No.
It was on Disney Plus. I don't know why that was the only thing that was changed.
That's ridiculous. I didn't want to think about that.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Anyway. Okay, so back to the story.
Anyways, this is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. So obviously this is a highly recommended. There's another thing, there's a little bonus at the end.
Right. Just how strong is Spider-Man?
Yes. Yeah. And you know what's interesting is this was before you've read Marvel Universe, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the handbook of the Marvel Universe is the character by character guide to every character in the Marvel Universe. It's kind of like a manual for all the characters. It started in, I think, 83, then there was another edition in 85, then an update in 89, and then another one. This was before that, so they don't even give exact measurements, but they show like pictures of all the major Marvel superheroes and where they fit in as far as power class. So at the very top, they have the Hulk, Thor, Hercules, Wonder Man, Iron Man, and they're called the super heavyweights. Then they go down one, and it's the heavyweights, then the super medium weights, which includes Spider-Man, and then there's the medium weights, and then there's the bottom one doesn't really have a name, but it's basically people with just
I assume that they were also medium weights.
Oh, okay, maybe they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're people with just normal human strength, like Captain America, Wolverine, which people tend to forget, because in the movies, Captain America is like falling from skyscrapers and surviving. Like, Captain America is supposed to just be an Olympian level athlete. That's it.
Right.
So whatever, that times have changed, I guess. But this is the way it was in 1982 or 81, I guess.
Yeah, it's also weird, I guess, seeing Wolverine in medium weights too.
Well, he's supposed to just be normal human strength.
Yeah.
So, at least back then he was.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so, then there's little tidbits in the back, like Peter Parker's apartment. They kind of show that. Then there's pinups and explanations for the Man-Wolf.
Jackal.
The Punisher. A really weird shot of the Punisher. Tarantula.
He's like pointing the gun really weird.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of a weird shot. Before he was kind of... I guess his design was sort of evolving at that time.
Right.
And then there's Tarantula. So yeah, basically overall a really cool annual, like during a time when annuals were still kind of essential reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is definitely a good one. So I recommend it. I'm sure you do.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. This is one of my favorite ones we've read.
All right, me too. Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately, now we're going to jump over to Marvel Team Up. Spider-Man and Iron Man in a story that I just read and I cannot remember a goddamn thing about, okay?
Okay.
Do you remember anything about this story?
Yeah. So this guy, Magma, I believe. I don't remember what. There's a bunch of like earthquakes happening and earth tremors. So Spider-Man and Tony Stark, Iron Man go and investigate. And it turns out that it's Magma, and he's I can't remember what his big deal is. He's like, he wants to destroy the city. I'm pretty sure.
Probably, yeah.
And using these earthquakes, and they stop him. And honestly, I feel like this story felt the most similar to the Spider-Man TV show that we watched.
Yes, I could see that.
Like
just a very hokey plot,
yeah,
right? Like over the top, and you know, Tony Stark has this. What is it, like an earthquake detecting machine, kind of?
Right. And somehow Spidey stops the earthquakes from happening using the machine, and yeah.
And then they've got this. What's it called? Like
the drill.
Yeah, the drill that they drill down, and then it's funny because they end up in a tunnel. Now, as we all know that in comic books and cartoons, tunnels always have full illumination,
right?
Even though they should be completely black.
I think they do mention that though.
You know they do, but I was going to say at least they point that, they go, but it seems to be lit by some kind of artificial illumination,
right?
Which, okay, at least they acknowledge it. But the thing is we should point out the art and the plot were by Herb Trimpe. The dialogue or the script is by David Michelinie, who is a good writer. But what I'm thinking is Herb Trimpe probably just sort of plotted this out, the very basics,
right.
Drew it, and then David Michelinie had to kind of figure it out as he went along, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
right?
that makes sense.
So, I don't know. Then we get this, then Magma comes in, and, you know, Spidey and Iron Man are kind of captured.
Also, what a goofy looking villain, huh?
Yeah, really goofy.
He looks like a character from Mask.
Yeah, I can see that.
Have you remember that show?
Oh, are you kidding me? I got all the comics.
Oh,
of course.
awesome.
All the toys, yeah. Love Mask.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's really kind of corny and cheesy. I really kind of like that Magma ends up stopping Spider-Man and Iron Man, and then having them like tied up in the evil lair monologuing. I actually really like that. Like, I think that if that happened too often, it would get very old. But seeing it now, it really feels like very stereotypical superhero idea, and I just kind of enjoyed reading it.
Yeah, like it's basically a throwback. It
right.
just feels like this story could be from the 60s, right? It would fit right in with the 1960s.
Yeah.
So, whew, this is one of those ones where, as I was reading it, my eyes were glazing over. Like, I wasn't really pulled in by this story at all.
Okay. Yeah, I actually had a little bit more fun with this one than I thought.
Okay.
I don't think it was fantastic, but I don't think I was as bored as you were. But I think I was just kind of into that throwback feel of it.
And it was definitely fun.
Yeah.
And like we said, like I like Herb Trimpe, I like David Michelinie, so it wasn't terrible. It was just kind of cliche.
Yeah.
So, do I recommend it? Not exactly.
No,
Not exactly.
Yeah. I don't think I would point this one out to be like, yeah, you should go read this one. But if somebody was reading it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was an interesting one. Like, I'd want to talk to somebody about it. You know?
Right.
But
okay, so kind of an average issue of
Yeah.
Marvel Team Up, but Marvel Team Up is always kind of average. Like it's never really great, but it's kind of average. But
Right.
yeah. So that brings us to once again the best issue of the month, Peter Parker of the Spectacular Spider-Man. Another issue that I loved.
right.
But before we get into the interiors, I want to point out the cover was drawn by Bob. I think it's Bob Wyasik. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's usually an inker. The cover's not great. What do you think of this cover?
Yeah, it's a little bland.
The pose is a little stiff.
Yeah. I don't think that the anatomy is off a whole lot, but the poses aren't very interesting.
Right.
The coloring isn't very great.
No. Not a great cover.
I mean, even the word bubble around "We want Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man" is kind of boring. Like, there's really not much to it.
No. It's especially compared to last month's cover. It's just not very good. The interior art is drawn by Jim Mooney, who's been inking and or drawing a lot of these Spider-Man comics lately. So I do like the art. It is, again, a little bit more 60s-ish than the last issue, but I still really like it. And basically, we're picking up where we left off last month with this guy making a documentary about Spider-Man, which is really cool. And then we're introduced to this guy called Marty Blank, who at first I couldn't remember who he was, but okay, so I just kind of followed along, and all of a sudden, this guy Marty Blank decides that he sees Spider-Man and it kind of sets him off, but we don't know why yet. And then he kind of goes, he's kind of like doing his own thing, but again, if you don't know who Marty Blank is, we kind of don't know why yet, but he's out to get Spider-Man, and we're not really sure. So then we kind of touch base with Spidey, and he's kind of doing his thing. He rescues an old man from two people racing their cars. Then he arrests, he kind of webs up the guys in the cars to kind of make them, to arrest them for the police or whatever.
Right, he kind of ties them up in the cars.
Right. Yeah, again, kind of ridiculous, but whatever. Yeah. That's still Spider-Man fun. And then we touch base. We kind of join in where we left off last month, which is with the Beetle, who has just designed his new armor. And because of the battle that Spider-Man had with the Ringer last month, now he's kind of formulating his plan of how he's going to beat Spider-Man, right? So he's kind of showing off his new armor.
Yeah, we get a little bit of like a James Bond testing out his new tech page.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, smashing through a wall and doing some other stuff, and it's kind of cool because he actually shows that he's narrating to himself, thinking to himself about the information on the computer, and then he's like, "This thin magnetic memory wafer is programmed with a detailed analysis of Spider-Man's fighting prowess." It's kind of cool, a wafer. Anyway, and then it kind of just goes from there. So then we have. It's kind of weird because now we have Marty Blank and this documentary filmmaker flying over top of New York. And at one point, the guy says, "I don't know why I let you talk me into it, you crazy gorilla." And then he says, "Jack, how long have we known each other? A couple months, I guess. Then do me a favor and put that camera down a minute." "Huh, sure, but why?" "Because it's very expensive and I don't want you to drop it." "Now, don't ever call me a crazy gorilla, understand?" It just goes to there. It's kind of over the top, but whatever. So then we have this subplot of the guy who was introduced last month. What's his name? Greg Salinger, right? The blonde. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Who's getting hassled by these guys like on campus, and so Spider-Man. So Peter Parker changes into Spider-Man to sort of intervene, but then he finds out that these tough guys are actually from the FBI,
right? And
there's some secret past with Greg Salinger that we don't know about yet, but I'm sure we'll find out about in the future. So then as Spider-Man's going along, of course, then the Beetle comes down. But before the Beetle can intervene, we jump back to Marty Blank, and we find out that Marty Blank is, in fact, the Gibbon.
Right.
Which is funny because I actually read the last story that the Gibbon was in on Flea Market Fantasy.
Oh,
recently.
Interesting.
So I actually know exactly where this story is picking up from. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then it kind of just goes from there. There's fisticuffs between these two. And then later, the Beetle comes in. And I don't know. It's Spider-Man a pretty interesting fist fight.
Destroys another water tower.
Of course. There has to be, right?
I don't know what his obsession with killing water towers is. But Yeah.
And so I guess the only frustrating thing for me is that I really wanted to see the Beetle in this story. But it's kind of just a middle chapter.
I was going to say this felt very like the step that we're taking to get to the good story.
Exactly.
Because I don't think I actually enjoyed this one a whole lot.
Okay,
I don't think it was bad, but I don't think anything really exciting or fun happened.
Right.
But it did feel like it was setting something up that's going to be interesting because, I mean, not much plot happens. We follow this guy and the camera crew, and then we learn about him being the Gibbon.
Sure.
And then we kind of have a little bit of a fight with Spider-Man and Gibbon, and then that's about it. Like, nothing big really happens, like plot-wise.
Right.
So for me, it just felt like a setup of what they want to do.
That's true.
But I also didn't hate it. Like the art is really great. There's some fun panels. In particular, I really like on digital page 14, original 13. The last panel there is with the Beetle, and it's so good. The lighting on it is fantastic. The inking is so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this dramatic yellowy orange bright light shining on the Beetle's face and on his mask. It's very, very good.
Yep, I noticed that too.
Yeah.
It's really good. And it's funny because I got to point out that for anyone who listened last week, Spectacular number 58 was the first issue of Spider-Man I ever bought as a kid.
Right.
So I did not read this issue for like 30 years. Right.
Okay.
I never knew. And of course, I was a little bit disappointed because objectively, like you said, it's just not as good as the last issue, right? But still, probably, I mean, I know that we both probably enjoyed the Frank Miller annual more.
Yeah.
But I thought the writing in this was still good, you know?
Yeah.
I still did like it, so.
Oh, for sure. And we also, so we leave on another cliffhanger with the Beetle.
Right.
But finally, he's confronting Spider-Man. So there'll definitely be something next issue about that. So I'm pretty excited.
Right.
But you know what? You're right. Maybe it's just because the last issue I thought it was so good. This one felt like a little bit of a letdown because I felt like we really didn't like get the payoff that we were promised from last issue in this one.
It could also be because they're building up to number 60.
For sure.
60 is the fifth anniversary.
Okay.
Could be that.
That could be it, yeah.
They're kind of just marking time. So yeah, and also I got to point out that this month, if you read the letters page of 59, this month Tom DeFalco becomes the editor of all the Spider-Man comics. So
cool.
I think that's why we're going to see some changes coming in the creative teams, which we'll see as we go along. But yeah, I think things are about to pick up a little bit because we know that Roger Stern is eventually moving to Amazing. I'm just not sure exactly when, but it's coming soon.
Yeah,
So,
I think the stories are all getting better. I mean,
right.
even the Amazing Spider-Man story, I don't think it was as bad as some of the other ones, but
Okay, yeah.
I think that for the most part, this was a pretty good month.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I think it was half and half, to be honest. Like I
Yeah.
liked the Spectacular, I liked the Amazing Annual, but then the Amazing and the Marvel Team Up were not as good, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the Marvel Team Up was a little bit better for me, but I was kind of there for the like corny throwback.
Sure.
So
Yep.
I enjoyed it for that reason. Like just like if I were to watch those old 60s Spider-Man or 80s Spider-Man TV shows, kind of has that same feel for me, so.
Sure, yeah. Good point. Okay, so overall, a pretty good month for Spidey. And next week, we will be covering Amazing 222, Marvel Team Up 111, and Spectacular number 60.
Yes, we will. And that's all of November of Spidey Comics from 1981. If you guys want to check us out at Comic Syndicate on Twitter and the Comic Book Syndicate on Facebook, we'd love to hear what you guys think about the episodes. You can leave us comments on our YouTube page or tweet at us or send us messages on Facebook. We'd love to hear what you guys think about the episodes and the comics we're reading.
That's right. So until next week, this has been Here Comes the Spider-Cast.
All right, see you then.